Everybody, we appreciate you joining us for this workshop today. I'm Robert Theobald, Small Business Ombudsman and Vice President of Small Business Services, and I'll be your host today. We are glad to have you with us. For those that are new, we do our Small Business Bootcamp webinar series every Tuesday morning, but today is one of our workshops, and we do a handful of workshops every year. And we last year started working with the Arizona Department of Revenue to do this business tax basics, as we are engaged now in tax season. So to start off, we want to share a real quick note for those that haven't been on the Small Business Bootcamp before. The Small Business Bootcamp is a weekly webinar series designed to help small businesses prepare, plan, and grow. It is supported by our 120 plus community partners, statewide community partners, and it is a free and accessible content library as well. Today's workshop is part of the workshop series that we are doing. We are doing some webinar workshops as well as some live in-person workshops, and we'll touch on those here in a second. But if you want to attend the weekly webinars, you can find those on the same page in which you went to register for this one. We have each of the weekly webinars there. So some of the upcoming webinars and workshops, we have our cultural marketing framework on this coming Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, next Wednesday, we will have an in-person workshop with the Phoenix Business Journal. And we're excited about that. It's a continuation. We did some workshops with them last year, and we are going to continue in 2023. And then the following Tuesday is using resilience in work and life. And then also later that Tuesday in the evening at 6 p.m. in the evening is our second of our monthly Spanish language boot camp. So if you know anybody that has a business and prefers Spanish, that we are doing these webinars to help our Spanish language folks here in Arizona as well. And we're excited about that workshop series that we're doing there. So you can all join us for those upcoming sessions. So we're excited to jump in quickly into today's session with our partners at the Arizona Department of Revenue. Our presenters will be Darren Sweet and Megan Hawker, and Lorelei will be helping with some of the Q&A. And as we talk about Q&A, because we're using the webinar format, at the bottom of your screen, you will see a little box like you see there that says Q&A. That's where we want all the questions to go, so we can utilize the chat for interaction throughout the presentation. It's also easier to answer the questions when they're in the Q&A. They don't get lost among some of the chat features. So that's a little housekeeping piece. Also, this is not just an hour-long webinar. It's going to be more than an hour, but stay as long as you can, and we are recording it, and it will be available in our content library either later today or tomorrow. It may take a little bit longer than that. A lot of our team is tied up with other activities that the ACA is part of for the Super Bowl week. And so it's a very busy and crazy week for a lot of people around the state. But with that, we're going to jump in and turn the time over to our team with the Department of Revenue with Darren and Megan. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let them share theirs.
Well, thanks, Robert. And as Darren gets his screen uploaded, he's going to cover the first part of the presentation. I'm just going to real quick introduce myself. My name is Megan Hawker. I am the Education and Training Programs Administrator with the Arizona Department of Revenue. My co-facilitator today is Darren Sweet. He is one of our community outreach coordinators on our team. And we couldn't be more excited to be in partnership with the ACA for this program today. We are always super appreciative and super excited when others come to us to see what kind of education we can provide. Today, we will be talking about business tax basics and specifically transaction privilege tax. So as we get into the meat of our presentation today, we are going to ask that you keep your questions related to transaction privilege tax. This is not an income tax course, so please keep your questions related to transaction privilege tax. And as Faith mentioned in the chat and Robert mentioned here, please use that Q&A function. That way myself and Lorelai can go in there and answer questions as we go along. One other thing I do want to mention is if any off-topic or unrelated questions arise, please know that we may not have the capability to respond to those questions, as we are only education and training. We don't work for the call center. We don't work for our tax policy team or our communications team. We are just education and training, so we can offer you general knowledge questions. At any point, if you do have account-specific questions, you're more than welcome to either email my team or reach out for assistance. And you can reach us at educationunit@azdor.gov. And with that, I'm going to put myself on mute and turn off my camera and turn it on over to Darren so that he can get us started today. So thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you so much, Megan. And Robert, we're really happy to be here. Faye, thank you so much, everybody. I'm also just going to stop sharing my video. It just seems to work a little bit better if we're off the screen here before we get started here today. So we're very excited to have everybody joining us here on our Transaction Tax Privilege Basic Workshop. All right, so as we get started today, I'm going to go ahead and share with you 6 slides that contain our statutory responsibilities as a state agency here at the Department of Revenue. We may aid in the legislative process of developing technically sound and administratively feasible policies, but remember, the mandate to do so comes from our legislature and signed into law by our governor. Now, the department's authority is outlined in Titles 42 and 43 of the Arizona Revised Statutes. So what I'm going to do this morning is I'm not going to read these to you, but rather I'm just going to click through them slowly, and you will be able to read them on your own. And so there's not going to be any audio for the next 6 slides. Go ahead and read our statutory responsibilities. And remember, as always, here at the Department of Revenue, our mission statement is to serve our taxpayers, and this is one of the ways we do it through our classes. So again, we're so happy to be here this morning. Let's go ahead and read the statutory responsibilities together. Okay, so those were our statutory responsibilities. So let's talk a bit about our agenda this morning, as indicated in the sign-up registration. This is the Business Tax Basics Workshop for Transaction Privilege Tax. And what we're going to do this morning is we're going to cover some of these following areas. We're going to talk about some general notes and introduction. We'll be walking through some news and updates. We're talking about today mostly about our TPT, or our Transaction Privilege Tax features, our TPT versus use tax. We're going to go over licensing. We're going to talk about filing frequency and thresholds. We're going to talk about location-based reporting and tax rates. We're also going to delve into what exemption certificates and deduction codes are. We will talk about added tax versus factor tax. We will have some best practices And there will be a wonderful example that Megan's going to be able to walk you through. I'm going to do the first half and Megan's going to do the second half, and she'll walk you through a great example of how what we learned today and how to apply that onto doing a TPT return. We'll also do a very short knowledge check, and don't worry, we're not graded on it. We're just going to have some questions that you're going to be able to check what you've learned today. We'll have a, I think the survey is going to be at the end of the presentation. That'll come through. And again, if you've got any questions, then we will be able to answer those at the end of the presentation. We will also share with you some available resources. Okay, so just a little bit about today's class. If you have any questions pertaining to the slides that we're on, go ahead and feel free to utilize that chat feature, or the question and answer feature, I should say, not the chat feature, the question and answer feature that we're using through here through Zoom this morning, and we'll do the best to answer those questions as we go. I've got Lorelei and Megan in there to be able to help out answering some of your questions. Now, I would like to say if there's some kind of an off-topic or unrelated question that may arise while we are going through this, I would just ask for you to hold on to those. I think we're going to have plenty of time for question and answers after our presentation. Okay. And if there's anything that's requiring a follow-up, you can talk to Megan or Lorelei, maybe something you need, something of a more personal matter, and we might be able to walk you through that as well. So just a note about the Department of Revenues and their web browsers. If you are using our system and on our websites, we recommend, if you're on a Macintosh or Windows system, to go ahead and use Google Chrome or Firefox. Now, here at the state of Arizona, we use Google Chrome for pretty much everything at this point. So that is for optimal performance. Now, at this time, again, users are reporting unpredictable results when they use the Safari web browser and the new Microsoft Edge. Again, I don't think all the bugs have been worked out of that. So if you want to use the two websites that we're going to talk about today, that would be azdor.gov or aztaxes.gov. We just go ahead that recommend that you open those up into Google Chrome. Okay, so here's another great feature. Now you can be informed of news and updates, and you can go ahead and subscribe to receive text or emails on the latest news and updates at the Department of Revenue. So as you'll see here, there's a little subscribe. If you go over to the Department of Revenue.gov, azdor.gov, there should be this link that pops right up. Now, all you have to do is drop your email on this and hit the subscribe button, and you're going to receive general information on the transaction privilege tax information, and you're going to receive transaction privilege tax filing and renewal reminders, along with really important information that comes from the department. Now, for some reason, if this little pop-up box does not show when you go over to azdor.gov, just scroll down to the bottom of the page. It'll be a little bit over to your right, I believe, and it says subscribe for updates. So we encourage you, if you have not subscribed, to receive our information from the Department of Revenue, and you would like to do that, jump on over to that website and go ahead and subscribe. We'd love to have you come subscribe to get the latest information from the Department of Revenue. Now, also, our Arizona taxpayers are going to have another option when they're going to seeking answers to some just general questions of state taxes and our transaction privilege tax program. Right here, there's a little general help, speak to a live agent. Well, right there, you can go ahead and click on that little pop-up application, and that's going to provide you with answers to general knowledge questions and offer some navigational guidance. Now, currently, our Department of Revenue live chat feature is available for inquiries, and that's Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. So you can get on there during the weekday and you can ask questions of a general nature. And remember, here at the Department of Revenue, our taxpayer privacy is paramount to the department. So any really specific taxpayer information is not going to be addressed through this website lab chat feature. If you're a customer and you're seeking information on a particular private taxpayer matter or confidential account information, you're going to be directed over to a Department of Revenue service department. But this is available for you. Again, it's available. We'll have a live person on there during the week. If you would like to ask a general question, anything concerning the Department of Revenue, they can help you out on that. So make sure that you utilize that feature if you need to. Okay, so throughout the presentation, you're going to see this little dancing bookmark right here, and basically means that we're going to be navigating to a page that we highly recommend you bookmark for your reference. So if you see that little dancing bookmark right there, it's a good idea to maybe have that something that you would like to either bookmark it or take a note of that throughout our presentation. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our first section. And as we get started with our first section, let's go ahead and review some of the key terms that we're going to use in today's presentation. So some of these you may be familiar with and some you may not be. So let's just go ahead and look at them together. So the Arizona Revised Statutes is ARS. The Arizona Administrative Code is AAC. The Business Account Update Form is called a BAU. Now, the Employer Identification Number is an EIN. We'll be talking about something called a Joint Tax Application, and that is a JT-1. We're also going to speak a little bit about the Model City Tax Code, that is MCTC. And I think all of us pretty much know that Social Security number is SSN, but Tangible Personal Property is TPP. And again, this is our Transaction Privilege Tax Workshop, that is TPT. And the Transaction Privilege Tax Ruling is TPR, and our Transaction Privilege Tax Notice is TPN. And finally, withholding is WTH. So I'll leave that up just here for a moment so you can just kind of glance through that again and kind of get some of those acronyms in your head. We are very acronym happy here at the state. We love to use acronyms. So, you know, when you're looking at these, kind of know what we're talking about when we walk through this together. All right, again. So here is our first section, and we're going to be talking about something called licensing. Okay, so now that we talked about what is licensing, what are we talking about when we say that? Well, a TPT license may be obtained by submitting a completed joint tax application. That's that JT-1, which you just talked about. And this application is named this because it is used both by the Department of Revenue and the Department of Economic Security to apply for TPT, use tax, and employer withholding and unemployment insurance. Now, for more information on withholding tax, you can go ahead and visit the Department of Revenue over there at the taxpayer education page you see there in blue to register for one of our withholding workshops. And I will give a quick plug while we're talking about this. We're going to be talking about several workshops and tutorials that are available to you. The taxpayer, you can go over to our education page right here, and there's a lot of tutorials available for you. We're going to walk you through a few of those today, but I would encourage you to take a look at all the taxpayer education tutorials, and we have pages set up to help the taxpayer with their transaction privilege tax program. So know that that is available to you as well. Now, you also want to note that when you're talking about this JT-1, that your application cannot be processed if the EIN, the employer identification number, is not included off the application. So you need an EIN. Now, if you do not have an EIN, you may obtain one by simply going over and visiting the IRS, and it's irs.gov to obtain that. And I think their turnaround time is pretty quick. If you go over there, you register for one, you get one back fairly quickly. Also remember this, TPT licenses are non-transferable. And if you are acquiring an existing business, you must obtain a new TPT license to operate that business. Let me give you a small example. If you run a business and you decide to pass it along to your child and retire, that child is going to have to go ahead and open up a new license. They cannot use yours. So just know that if you're acquiring or passing on an existing business, you're going to have to obtain a new TPT license to operate that business. Okay, we talked about how we needed a license and we need an electronic JT-1. So here's a few of the places that you can find this. So first of all, you can find the electronic JT-1, and it can be completed as well over at aztaxes.gov. Now, if you want to use a paper JT-1, this may be submitted through the mail or at a Department of Revenue office. Paper forms are available over at azdor.gov, as with all of the forms for the Department of Revenue. If you are searching for one of our forms or applications, you go over to azdor.gov. That's where you go to find forms, and you will be able to download this application. Now, remember, there's no difference in the information requested or filing these items available to you between applying online and paper. But I have to tell you, if you do it by If you go online and do it, you've got that speeds up the process a lot if you go ahead and apply it on aztaxes.gov. And if you mail a paper application, it can increase your timeline up to 14 business days, and that is depending on volume. Also, if you submit your application online through aztaxes.gov, this will enroll you to file and pay online via aztaxes.gov. And that's a fantastic way to go. If you are going to be enrolling, do it online. It's much quicker and easier to do it. We're trying to get out of the paper business. And so you can submit those JT-1s on paper, but when you go to file your taxes, you're going to have to create an account through the aztaxes.gov. It's just quicker and faster to go over to aztaxes.gov and set that account up. Okay, so we know that we have to do this, right? So go ahead and register on AZ Taxes, and that's just simply a 3-step process. All you have to do is enroll to file and pay online. Then you're going to have to set up an e-signature PIN. You're going to link your accounts, and that's simply it. Now, again, I've said this before, we have tutorials available for you. We have a new user registration tutorial that is accessible over at aztaxes.gov or again over at azdor.gov/taxpayer-education. So if you are struggling or you need to refresh your memory and how to have a new user registration, go ahead and go over there and watch that tutorial. Now, remember, these tutorials are in a YouTube format, so you can watch them at 3 in the afternoon if you choose, or you can watch them at 3 in the morning if you choose to do so. But please take advantage of our tutorials. We have created those to help you as a taxpayer to understand some of the rules and regulations and the roles. And getting on and creating a new an online registration is one of the ones that we have, so please take advantage of that. Okay, I want to talk about a couple of forms that kind of go along with some of the things that we're talking about when it comes to the transaction privilege tax. And one of the forms I want to talk to you about is called the Business Account Update Form, or the 10193. Now, what this does, this allows updates to business information. Now, this should be reviewed annually, and we suggest to do this around November because license renewals, if you have a business, you know this, they were all due at the 1st of January. So these are only due, these tax licenses are only good for a year. We'll get into that a little bit more. But you want to know that this business account update form, or the BAU, consists of 14 sections, but you only need to fill out the ones that you wish to update. Now, again, for convenience, some updates are available over at AZ Taxes as well. And over there, you can cancel a license, you can change a mailing address, and you can update location information. So that is our business account update form. And again, you can find that over at azdor.gov. Now, you can find that a couple ways. You can either go through where it says forms, or you can just simply search under the search bar. When you go to AZDOR or AZ Taxes, there's a search engine. Just go ahead and type in business account update form, and that'll bring you to this form. Okay, the next one I want to talk about, another important form when we're talking about the transaction privilege tax, is our power of attorney form 285. Now, a power of attorney can be used to authorize the department to release confidential information to your appointee. Now, remember, there's a variety of these 285s available, but you want to choose the one that best suits your needs. And that one may be the most encompassing form, is this general disclosure representation authorization form, or this 285. Now, again, this includes the ability to grant additional powers to the appointee up to and including the power of attorney. Now, once you get this all download it and you want to scan it, you can submit it over to us over at poas@azdor.gov. Now, this is the preferred method because it's going to generate a reply when you send it. You can also fax it, and you can also mail it as well over here at Taxpayer Information Assistance, and that's at the Arizona Department of Revenue, P.O. Box 29086 in Phoenix, 85038-9086 if you wish. But the easiest way to do it is just go ahead and download that form, fill it out, send it to us at poa@azdor.gov. So we have a very specific email box that's sent up just for these power of attorney forms. I'll leave this up just for a moment, and I'll take a quick pause here. If you've got any questions or anything anything we're talking about, again, hit us up on that Q&A, and we'll do our best to answer those as we go along. But I'll just quick pause for about 20 seconds, see if we have any questions, and you can also review this again. Okay, so let's talk about license renewals as well. This is an important piece of this. Now, licenses are valid again for 1 calendar year. And I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, January to December, regardless of when that license would initially open. So to avoid unnecessary renewal fees and penalties on locations that are no longer active, you should delete any locations as soon as you close that business and before renewing. Now, the Department of Revenue strongly encourages taxpayers to file, enroll, and pay online via AZ Taxes for easier renewal and faster processing, which we've said that already. You want to make sure that everything is correct and up to date as well. Now, know that failure to pay your renewal by January 1st may result in penalties. So lucky for us, we're only in February, right? So if you're going to go ahead and open up a license, know that it's going to be due till the end of the year, the calendar year, which would be December. And then it's going to have to be renewed on January 1st. You have plenty of time to get that done. Also, if you would like a tutorial on that, we do have that. It's a TPT license renewal tutorial. And again, that's available over at azdor.gov/taxpayer-education. So again, we have help for you. We are here to help you. We're not the bad guys. We want to help you out. If you need if you've got questions, go ahead and go over and visit that taxpayer education page, because we have lots of great stuff over there available for you. We have this tutorial on license renewal as well that we'd love to have you take a look at. All right, so let's talk about this real quick. This is a really fantastic resource. This is the TPT Online Quick Reference. And again, you can go ahead and go over there to the azdor.gov/transaction-privilege-tax/quick reference for several online resources and tips to assist you in filing and paying online on aztaxes.gov. And if you see that, you see we got all our online resources available for you there. We've got everything from filing and paying online to looking up tax rates, which we're going to talk about today. Talk about location-based reporting and location codes. We're going to discuss that as well. Tutorials, you see this tutorial step by step, and then it even has employer withholding on there and frequently asked questions. It has handy tips, as well as at the bottom there, it says for assistance, contact us. And if you would like to visit one of our business tax workshops that we do twice a month, and then you can visit us over there and register for that one as well if you would like to sort of take this class again. So that is a fabulous quick reference guide that you would definitely bookmark this. Again, it's that quick reference guide for you. Put it in your favorites and refer to it often as you need. All important information on transaction privilege tax is there for you. Okay, so we're going to get into now filing frequencies and thresholds for electronic filing and payments. Okay, so when we talk about filing frequency, this is the way we're going to look at it. To determine your appropriate filing frequency, you're going to have to estimate your annual combined state, county, and municipal tax liability. Now, if you estimate that your tax liability is going to be less than $2,000 a year, you're going to request to file annually. You may do that. Now, if you fall between $2,000 and $8,000 per year, you may file quarterly, request that as well. And if you fall into a category where you have an annual liability of more than $8,000, so you're doing a lot of business and you're getting that liability up to $8,000, you're going to be required to file monthly. So again, just to review, if you are doing it once a year, right, less than $2,000 quarterly, like we're January, February, March, it's on a quarterly basis, like every 3 months, 2,000 to 8,000. And if you're doing a lot of business and your liability is more than 8,000, it's going to be monthly. Now, remember that filing frequencies can be changed by submitting that business account update form that we talked about a little bit earlier. Know that the effective date for the new filing frequency will depend on when the request is received and the business's current filing frequency. And basically what we're meaning here is the effective date of the change is contingent upon when the respective filing frequency's next cycle will begin. Now, I'll give you a short example. If a taxpayer is requesting to go from a monthly filing frequency to an annual filing frequency, and let's say that request is received this May, then that change would not be effective until January when that next cycle begins. So again, just like our license, when you go to change a filing frequency, if you do it, say even now in February, it will not go into effect until the new cycle begins, and that will be next January. So that is our filing frequency. So if you own a business and your thresholds, this is what the thresholds look like in order for you to file. All right. So again, when we talk about thresholds, we're talking about thresholds for electronic filing and payments here. And as of last year, 2 years ago now, any transaction privilege taxpayer with an annual liability of more than $500 is going to be asked to file electronically. Now, again, this is reflective upon the department's movement away from paper and into electronic filing. So if your liability is over $500, you're going to be asked to file electronically. Now, please note that if you reach the required e-files threshold before that year's end, you must file online for the remainder of the year to avoid a penalty. And again, let me give you an example of this. So let's say by October, if my business has already incurred $350 in liabilities, but I'm going to estimate with Christmas coming up by December that I'm going to do more business. And so I'm going to go over 150, 175. Well, I should go ahead and register to e-file and remit any remaining taxes or returns using aztaxes.gov. And again, this is much faster to file electronically than to do it by paper. So to avoid these penalties, it's highly recommended that you get familiar with the aztaxes.gov sooner than later. Yeah, I'm just going to pause briefly to see if anybody has any other questions. So let's take about 30 seconds. If you've got those, go ahead and drop them in the question and answer, and then we'll start talking a little bit after this about location-based reporting. Okay, even though I can't really see the question answered while I'm presenting, I do see that there was a few questions that were dropped in there, so I hope that we're getting those answered as we go along here. Okay, so let's talk about this. This is called location-based reporting, and we're going to start out talking about location codes. All right. And so let's define kind of what we're talking about when we say location codes. Well, a location code is a unique 3-digit number that's assigned by the Department of Revenue, and it identifies the physical location of the business activity within a jurisdiction. Now, this code enables the Department of Revenue to collect taxes generated in a specific region and disperse revenue to that specified city or district. Now, note also that this code is only used to report activity at the city/town level. But this location code is going to be assigned by the department, and that's going to be the address that you had originally filled out on your JT-1. So here's a really great example of what we call a transaction privilege tax license. Now, you may have seen this if you go into different venues. I noticed, I just got my haircut yesterday, that they had their transaction privilege tax license on their wall, showing that they indeed have one that had all this information on it. And sometimes restaurants or bars will have these posted as well. So next time you go in one, see if they've got theirs posted. But again, when you're looking at this transaction privilege tax license, you want to take note of a couple of things. First, you want to take note of the license number, the start and issue date, and the expiration date. So that would be over in this area or to the right. So you got license, start, issued, and expired all over here on that side of it. So if you're looking at these, you can kind of take a look and see what that is. Now, remember that TPT licenses are only going to be valid for 1 calendar year, and you will be required to renew those no later than January. We've talked about this a couple of times, but know that. And the TPT license is issued to that mailing address provided on that JT-1 form. So whenever that form you sent in to get this started, this is where they're going to send it. So if that has changed, you're going to have to make sure to let the department know. But this right here is a location code. You see that right there, that little 3-digit number? That little location number of the business is a 3-digit number located on the left side of the license under that address. So that's location code 001. So that would be where your business is, and that's the location code. So a little more about these location codes. Again, the unique location code is used to identify the location or locations where taxable business transactions are taking place. Now, for this reason, businesses must specify the location code for each unique business location when filing their taxes. And I'll give you an example here. If you begin a business in one location, it's going to be assigned location code 001, like we just saw on that transaction privilege tax license. But let's say that you close those doors. And even if say you're in a strip mall and you want a bigger location, even if you move 2 storefronts down, you are going to become, that's going to become business location 002. So it's important to remember to delete those closed locations to avoid paying unnecessary renewal fees at the end of the year. And again, to do so, all you have to do is use one of our business account or BAU forms that you can find online. And also remember that businesses with more than one location are going to be required to file on aztaxes.gov. So if you have more than one location, you're going to have to file with us online. And again, here's a handy understanding location codes tutorial that is available at azdor.gov/taxpayer-education. Again, if you're having questions or you're not quite understanding what this is, go watch that tutorial. It is available for you over there on our education page. All right, any questions about location codes before we get into our ins and outs of taxes? Let me go ahead and just pause just for a second. I think it's like a couple of questions are in the Q&A session right now. So let's go ahead and pause for about 20 seconds, give them a chance to get caught up in there. And then we're going to move on to what we call the transaction privilege tax features. All right, looks like a couple of those have been answered. But let's go ahead and keep on moving. But again, if you do have questions pertaining to the slide that we're on or any information that we've covered up to this point, go ahead and go into that Q&A session and we'll be happy to try to help you out in there. Okay, so let's talk about our transaction privilege tax features. So just to give you a little bit of an overview, the Arizona transaction privilege tax, well, what it is a tax on the privilege of engaging in certain taxable businesses in the state. Now, remember that the liability for the tax is on the seller/vendor, and they may choose to pass that tax along to the purchaser. Now, if the tax is levied on the gross proceeds or the gross income derived from the business over there, that's going to be as well. So those are some of the features of that. Now, here's some of the taxable activities that can be included when we're talking about our transaction privilege tax. Now, for a, we're going to go out to the tax rate table and show you just here in just a little bit. But for a complete listing, you can go on out to that. But some of these examples are going to include stuff like retail, contracting, commercial lease, personal property rentals, amusement, and residential rentals. So those are some of the taxable activities that can be taxed under the transaction privilege tax program. And again, there's the current tax rate table. We're going to walk out and show you that here in just a moment. So don't fret. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's talk a little bit about this. This is basically the TPT versus the use tax. Now, let's talk a little bit about the difference in this. So the difference between the TPT and the use tax is that the responsibility of paying TPT or transaction privilege tax is on the vendor, and the use tax is on the purchaser. So let me say that one more time. The difference between TPT and use tax is that the responsibility of paying the TPT is on the vendor and the use tax is on the purchaser. Now, we have these remote seller marketplace facilitators laws that went into place around October 19. Our use tax has become less relevant. However, an Arizona purchaser is liable for use tax on goods purchased from an out-of-state vendor when that vendor did not collect the tax. Now, for this case, it's extremely important to review the invoice once that purchase has been received. Now, if there is no line that indicates a tax was charged for the order, you as a business can reach out to that vendor to ask if they are registered with the Department of Revenue for TPT collections. Now, if the vendor is, then that business doesn't have anything to remit. But if that vendor is not, and none of those economic or physical nexus rules apply, then the business would remit the tax, the use tax for purchases to the Department of Revenue. So that's how that's broken down. Let's talk a little bit about this now. Who pays use tax? And we just talked about use tax versus TPT, but let's talk about use tax and who's paying it. So an Arizona purchaser is liable for use tax on goods purchased from an out-of-state vendor that did not collect the tax. So let's use an example here. Let's say that I have a t-shirt printing business and I purchase my bulk t-shirts online from an out-of-state vendor. It is fairly cheap. Now, most likely that really attractive low prices because that particular state didn't levy or collect the taxes at the time of purchases. Now, subsequently, these shirts are delivered, and then I use those shirts here in Arizona during my course of business. I'm going to now owe use tax on that purchaser. Remember again that an Arizona purchaser is liable for use tax if they are purchasing goods using a resale certificate and the goods are subsequently used, stored, or consumed in Arizona contrary to the purpose that was stated on the certificate. And don't worry, we're going to talk about the resale certificates and exemption certificates a little bit later. We'll explain kind of what those are and how they work. But let me give you another really good example of use tax. Let's say that I have a beauty salon, and my beauty salon up front has those products such as shampoo and conditioner at retail at the front of my store. So if you walk into any barbershop or beauty salon, you know, as you walk up to the front there, right as you sit down, they have all their shampoos, conditioners, and all the things that they use right there, correct? They have that at retail at the front of the store. Now, I have used a 5000A resale certificate, which we will cover momentarily, to purchase these products tax exempt. But one day, I'm in the middle of providing services to my client, and I realize when I'm doing it that I have run out of shampoo in the back. So I walk up and pull a bottle from my retail shelf up front, and now I'm using it on my client. Well, now you've used that product that you had purchased tax exempt for something other than resale, and now you're going to go and owe that use tax. Now, again, if you purchase an item online and your invoice from the vendor has an Arizona address, then the vendor is responsible for the TPT or the transaction privilege tax, and no use tax applies. Now, I know that can be a little bit confusing. I do see a couple of questions have popped here in the questions and answer session. If there's any questions about our use tax, we're trying to get those answered. We are going to go into some of our certificates that affect that, like our exemption and our resale certificates through Megan's going to share that with you in a little bit. So don't fret, we are going to cover some of those things. But again, if you've got some of those questions about the use tax, go ahead and drop them in that question and answer, and we will be able to answer those for you. All right, so moving right along, we are going to talk a little bit about tax rates. Okay, so when we say tax rates again, what exactly are we talking about? Well, basically tax rates are the percentage at which your entity is taxed. Now, remember that your tax rate is a combination of state, county, and city/town rates. So all those are combined. All right, and those can be found over the Arizona State, County, and City Transaction Privilege and other tax rate tables, and you can download those over at the department. AZDOR.gov is where you'd want to go. And again, rates may vary based on the classification and location. So I'm not sure how many people have actually looked at the tax rate tables, but we're going to go out here in just a moment and actually go through the tax rate table and show you what that looks like. But let me give you a couple of helpful hints when we're talking about our tax rate table when you're looking at it. First of all, you want to know what business classification that you are reporting. So what I mean by that is if you are in the retail business, your business classification is going to be 017. You have to know that. You have to know what business classification you're reporting in order to find your correct tax. You also want to use the correct region code for the region you're using. And I'll show you an example of that here in just a moment. Also, you want to note that some businesses have additional rates. You want to pay attention to the footnotes in our tax rate table as well, and know that not all cities tax the same business classifications. So you want to go ahead and pay attention to the tiered rates. Okay, I'm not sure how many people have actually gone out and looked at the tax rate tables, but let me just give you a quick idea of what they are going to look like. Our tax rate table here, our table 1, displays the combined state and county tax rates. And also at the far right of that, you're going to have accounting credit rates. Megan's going to cover accounting credit rates a little bit later on in the presentation. So we will talk about that as well and what that means. Now, between table 1 and table 2, there's also a footnote section. We'll talk about that as well. Table 2 is going to contain a list of all the city tax rates and the city codes. So that tax rate is going to show the city/town, the region code, the business codes, the tax rates, and the county for each city. So those are how those are broke down. All right, our tax rate tables, 1 has combined state and county tax rates, 2 has all the city, town, region codes, business codes, tax rates, and county for each city. Okay, so let's take a look at an example of what this tax rate table looks like. This is table 1. Remember, we said that table 1 has all of our business code taxable activities, all of our counties, and it has the accounting credit rates for our paper filers and our electronic filers. And again, Megan will go with you at the end of the presentation a little bit more about that. Now, I know this is shrunken a little bit just to make a point what we're showing how this crisscrosses. But look here, business codes are here, taxable activities are here, and then all your county levels are there. So let's go ahead and use a retail example in Maricopa County because that's where the majority of us are. So remember we talked about this a little bit earlier. Your business code is going to be 017. Your taxable activity is retail. If you want to know what that is for Maricopa County for retail, you just go ahead and scroll on over to where it intersects with Maricopa County. And lo and behold, we know, and this is actually still true, that our taxable, these activities right here for your retail, that it's going to be 6.30%. Now, if you're in another business code with another activity, you just go ahead and find it. If you're restaurant at bars or your publication, and just take that and scroll on over and find the county that you're in, and it'll give you that rate. So that is our table number 1. Now, I want to call your attention to something else. If you look through these taxable activities here, you're going to notice that some of these actually have little subscript letters next to a specific business activities. So if you're looking at this from the top, it has communications, has a K, and we got MRA amount. I think that's a T. But let's look at transient lodging. That has a B. So if you're in the transient lodging business, know that there is a little subscript letter. Now, where do we find these little subscript letters? Well, we actually go between the two tables. So between table 1 and table 2, we have footnotes. So these little footnotes apply. If you're in a business where you have a little subscript letter, then you're going to have to look at the footnotes. Now, we talked about B just a second ago, and it shows you here that unincorporated areas of Pima County are going to add 6%, and they're also going to report using region code PH and class code 000. So if you are in the transient lodging business and you're in the unincorporated areas of Pima County, you're going to have to follow that footnote. So if this applies to you, and while you're looking through these tax tables and you find whatever business you're in, if it has that little subscript letter, make sure you pay attention to that and pay attention to these footnotes as they come down. So that's those little footnotes. All right, so now let's talk about our table 2. Now this contains a list of all the city tax rates and city codes. Now, again, when you look at this table, it's going to call out the city/town name, the region code, the business code, the tax rate and county. And now when you're reporting for the local jurisdiction, ensure that you are including the correct region code. Now, these are not always intuitive. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're looking at the correct region, this little region code right here. Make sure that you're making sure that is correct when you're looking at this. Now, they're not always intuitive, so you want to make sure that the ones are proper. So if we look at the Glendale tax rate table, if you come down to the business classification, this is the example of a tiered rate. So right here, we've got retail sales here in Glendale. And then right below that, we have retail sales for a single item over $5,000. So you've got 2 different business codes and 2 different tax rates. Now, my example of this would be if say you're selling a used car in the city of Glendale, and that car is $6,500. That first $5,000 is going to be under one tax rate. That additional $1,500 is going to be that tiered tax rate. So make sure whatever your city you're in, that you're paying attention to those tiered tax rates. Also, you want to notice here that Glendale has an awful lot more taxable activities than, say, the town of Gilbert does, as opposed to Gila Bend. So again, not all of these are going to have the same exact taxable activities, right? But that's an example of what we call that tiered rate structure. Now, I want to bring this up real quick just to show you again that these are not always intuitive. When we talk about the region codes, if you will look, Gila Bend has a GI, and then Gilbert has GB. Now, again, if the normal person would say, well, why isn't Gila Bend a GB and why isn't Gilbert to start the GI with a GI? But they're not. So you definitely want to make sure that when you're looking at these region codes, when you're putting them into the taxes and you're doing your tax, make sure you put the proper region codes for your entity, your town, your city. Because if you don't, if you're in Gilbert and you put GB, GI, then it's going to send Gila Bend all of your taxes. So we definitely don't want that to happen. So that's a good example of what our table 2 looks like. Again, just a quick recap here. Our table 1 displays the combined city and county rates. It also has the accounting rates. Table 2 contains a list of all the city taxes, city rates, and the city codes. And that table shows the city, town, region code, business lights, and counties for each city. So what I want to do right now is just run out to the tax tables live. Let's take a look at that. And you can see here, we've got our tax rate table. We've got our tax rate table right here for March of 2023. This is live, so we're actually in the month already. We got a tax rate archive table right here. And let me just pop that open. And you can see here that tax rate lookup table is going to show you January, February, December. So if you have to do an amendment to a transaction privilege tax, if you have to go back and amend something, you're going to want to look at when you did it. So if it was from last July, you want to look at the tax rate table of 2022, not the current tax rate table. There's also a remote seller and marketplace facilitators tax rate table on there as well. But let's go ahead and look at the current one together just to show you that it is there. Let's just kind of walk through it so I can show you what this looks like. Okay, so this is a live transaction privilege tax and other tax rate table. Now, again, with all of our forms and our tables and anything we have on our website, please make sure that you read all of the information at the top so you know what you're looking at and if there's been any changes. You notice right here, it says when applicable, changes will be highlighted in yellow. That's why it's important if you're doing an amended return for last July and you're looking at March 2023's tax tables, something could have changed. So we want to make sure we pay attention to that. Now, again, here is our tax rate. This one actually more of what it really looks like. Here's our business codes, our taxable activities, all the counties, and then our counting credit rates and our credit rates for electronic filers. Now, we said earlier, if we did retail for Maricopa, that was going to be, what, 6.3, right? So what do you say we go ahead and take a little closer look here? Here's our retail. Now I'm going to pull it all the way over here to Maricopa. And lo and behold, right there, it is still 6.3%. So that is, again, the table 1. Now let's go ahead and look at table 2. Here's that area where I told you you're going to have to look if you've got your subscript letters, right? If you got those little subscript letters, you're going to have to go down to these little footnote tables. And it looks like unincorporated areas of Pima County are still adding 6%. So just remember, if you have one of those little footnotes in your particular business, then you're going to have to go ahead and make sure that you pay attention to those. Now let's take a look here at table 2. This is going to be the county city tax rate lookup tool. And again, you can scroll down through every town and city in the state of Arizona, or you can simply hit Control and G. And if you hit Control G, it's going to bring a little search engine up at the top. And you see that, I guess I had already looked at Gilbert earlier, but I was just going to show you the same thing, that here's Gila Bend, here's Gilbert, over here is Glendale. It looks like over here, let's check their tiered rate as well. If we come over to retail sales right there, and guess what? Still the same. They have 2 different rates and 2 different business codes going on for retail sales. So they're just some of the things that you need to take a look at and you need to kind of pay attention to when you are looking at these particular things. So again, if you've got any questions on the tax rate tables, no worries, just go ahead and drop those in our question and answer. In fact, I see a couple questions in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and mute myself real quick before we get into talking a little bit more about our tax rate lookup tool. And I'm going to finish off with our tax rate lookup tool and our model city tax code. Then I'm going to hand this off over to Megan. But let's go ahead and pause a moment and you guys get those questions and those questions and answers, and we will go from there. Okay, still see one more question, but I'm sure that is getting answered. Let's back up here in our presentation. I want to talk a little bit about this. This is the Arizona tax rate lookup tool. Now, again, we can go out to the tax table or we can go over to aztaxes.gov and find this Arizona tax rate lookup tool. All right, and this is kind of a painless way to determine your tax rate. And how this works is, well, let's just go ahead and go out to it live and see if it'll bring it up for us. Okay, so this is aztaxes.gov. This is one of our websites that we use. You notice all the individual things on here like quick links and individuals. This is for our tax season coming up. And here's businesses. And this is where the businesses things are. And then here's your resources here as well. So we are looking for the Arizona tax rate lookup tool. Now here it is under resources. If you scroll all the way down to your right, then there you'll find it. Then you go ahead and pop that open. Okay. So again, with anything time you go out to one of our websites, make sure that you read and know what the purpose of this is. And the purpose of this page is to assist in determining tax jurisdictions and or reporting criteria. You want to enter the Arizona address of the physical business location, the delivery address, the job site, the rental address, or special event. And for more information on determining which address is appropriate based on your business, you can click here. And it's going to say you're going to be directed to find the transaction privilege and use tax rates imposed by the Arizona state, county, and reservation. So let's go ahead and use our address at the, currently our address, we may be moving, but right now we're still over there at 1600 West Monroe. Now I'm going to look and see, okay, Darren, let's see, what is the transaction privilege tax at this address? I go ahead and click on it. And once again, take a look at the top of it. We put 1600 West Monroe where the Department of Revenue is. And it says we are recommending business codes based on the general business description and the location that you provided. Now you only use the tax rates that are applicable to your business only. Also right here, you'll want to note if a description of your business activity can't be found, you can contact the department. And we also have a handy TPT due date calendar right there. So what we're looking for is a business description. Now, look at that. I popped that open. Look at all the business descriptions that are going down here. There's a ton of them, right? But we've been using retail for our example, so let's come on all the way down to retail. If we are a retail business, right where the Department of Revenue is, what does our tax look like? Well, those suggested business codes and tax rate table for retail is going to tell you that Maricopa County 017 for retail is 6.3, so that has not changed. But you have to know that you've got to do this for two different entities. You've got your county, then you've got your city town. So coming over and looking a little bit further down, now you notice that you've got Phoenix is 2.3. So now you know that your combined liability here, your 8.3% is what that is going to be for our location at the Department of Revenue for retail. So that's how you kind of find that. And again, these tax rates are effective as of today. They keep this very much they keep it very well stocked, and it's always going to have the most current stuff on it. And again, marketplace facilities and remote sellers can find these examples on that page right there. Okay, so I want to read this little caution with you right here. Okay, it says, caution, a person engaged in the business in Arizona may be subject to tax under more than one business classification code. Now, there may be a difference in tax rate depending on which business code applies to your business. Now, they give you a really good example here. For a person owning or operating a hotel, that is going to be 025 for the state. But they may also be engaged in under the retail classification 017. So they have a hotel. But guess what they have in that hotel? They have a little gift shop, right? That's retail. But then on top of that little gift shop at the hotel, they have a restaurant. They've even got a restaurant over there. So that's 011. And then say this hotel with the restaurant and the gift shop is sitting on a lake and they rent personal jet skis. So now they have a whole nother one. The personal rental classification, the property rental classification is 014. So the keynote and takeaway from all this is, if you operate under more than one business activity, you will need to select the business description that applies to each of your business activities to determine the appropriate tax for that business. So that's what that is. And just remember that this tax rate lookup tool is going to give you all the current tax rates. And remember, if you're submitting for months prior, you will need to use the archive tax rate table. All right, so I only got one more section to go here. We're going to talk about the what we call the Model City Tax Code, but I am going to pause just for a moment. We're only at 12 o'clock right now. We're going to have plenty of time to finish up our presentation, but I do want to make some time here. If you have any questions about what we talked about to this point, before I talk about the last thing, the tax rates in the Model City Tax Code, then go ahead and drop those into our question and answer. So I'm going to be quiet just for a moment, let you give you a chance to do that. All right, I can see Megan is diligent in there answering those questions. So I want to give her a chance to get caught up because I'm going to talk about this, the Model City Tax Code, and we are going to switch roles. Megan is going to go ahead and take over the rest of the presentation, and then we'll still have Lorelei in that chat and to answer those questions for you. So before I get started with this very last section, I sure do want to thank the folks for having us today. We do these classes that are available for free to you. So if you want to learn more about the class today, then you can always jump over to our education page. We do all kinds of classes, anything from property management, property owners, to, we do these business tax workshops. There's all kinds of things that you can go ahead and get knowledge from by just enrolling into our classes. We would love to have you. So that's my shameless plug for the department. And so please do that if you feel like you need to. Okay, so the last section I'm going to be talking about before I hand this over to Megan Hawker is our businesses here at our Model City Tax Code. The businesses are responsible for updating software applications at these point of sale machines with the current tax rates. Now, again, this information can be used to prepare for any future changes. And what I mean by that is implementation date changes, rate changes, and sunset date changes. And remember, you can check out the cities. This is done by the city here at the Model City Tax Code. These cities may choose to do this, and they're going to show it here at the Model City Tax Code. And then if you want to take a look at that, we can go out to this real quick as well before I sign off for the day. But this is the Model City Tax Code. You'll see right here, it's got your articles and regulations. This is the options adopted by those city towns. So make sure whatever city town you're in, that if you, there could be a model city tax, so they may have adopted something. So check that out. There's rate codes and updates in those city town profiles right there. And there's more information about it right there. So that is what you're looking at as well. Okay, so I have come to the end of my portion of the presentation. And again, I do see that there is, Megan right now is typing an answer. So I'm going to go ahead and let her finish doing that because she's so awesome at answering these questions. But I am going to hand it over to her in just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and let her finish up answering. I believe we have finally, she got in there and answered. No, we're at a standstill. Folks, again, it's been my pleasure to present the first part of this. Again, my name is Darren Sweet, and I have really enjoyed my time today. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing today, and I'm going to go ahead and let Megan take over with the rest of the presentation. And again, thanks so much to everybody, Robert, Faith. We really have had, I had a great time today. So Megan, please take it away. And you guys have a great rest of your day. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, Darren. We appreciate it. Just real quick, making sure everyone can see my screen. If you can use the chat and just let me know, go ahead and say yes, that you can see the slide that says exemption certificates for me. Yes, I can see it looks good. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, guys. So now I will be taking over for the last half of this presentation, which means Lorelei will be in the chat assisting with answering questions. So go easy on her. I'm not in there anymore, so we're not going to be able to answer questions as quickly. As I see questions come up, if they're pertaining to what's on the screen, I'll go ahead and try to answer those live to assist. But if she has to type out answers, just give her a few minutes to do that. We will get to you there, okay? So now we're going to go ahead and talk about exemption certificates. So an exemption certificate is going to be used to document and establish a basis for state and city tax deductions or exemptions. This certificate is to be filled out completely by the purchaser and furnished to the vendor at the time of the sale. Incomplete certificates are not considered to be accepted in good faith, and only one category of exemption may be claimed on a certificate. Also, the vendor needs to retain these certificates for audit purposes. So I saw a lot of questions in the chat and in the Q&A about tax exempt transactions. And this is what we're talking about here. If you have a transaction that should be exempt from taxation, so say like a sale for resale, you would use an exemption certificate to make that purchase tax exempt. So while TPT is imposed on the person doing business in Arizona, only the purchaser may execute an exemption certificate. So on the screen, there are several forms, the most common forms that are used for this purpose. There's the Arizona Form 5000, the Arizona Form 5000A, the Multi-State Tax Commission Exemption Form, and then we'll get into those last two links in just a minute. But the 5000 form, that is kind of the generic exemption certificate. So if you're looking at that one, you can only claim, or you can only use that form if one of your exemption reasons is listed on that form. The most common form that we see at the department is the 5000A, and that is the resale certificate. So if you log on to azdor.gov, if you're on the home screen here, the easiest way to get to the forms is to come over to this menu and click on Forms. From there, if you know you want the 5000A, you can type it in the search bar, or if you're not sure, you can click on this TPT Forms button here and see all of the forms associated with transaction privilege tax. Since I know we're looking for a 5000A, I'm going to go ahead and type it in the search bar and click Apply. And it's going to go ahead and bring it up for me. TPT Forms 5000A, Arizona Resale Certificate. So if I click on that, it's going to bring me to the resale certificate page. And the first thing I want to call out to you guys is that all of our forms will have their purpose stated directly on the page on which you download the form. So read this little blurb and make sure that the purpose is the purpose that's listed here is what you actually need. So this says the purpose of the certificate is to document the purchase of tangible personal property for resale and the purchaser's regular course of business. It's to be filled out completely by the purchaser and furnished to the vendor. The vendor shall retain the certificate for single transactions or for specified periods as indicated below. The certificate shall be obtained from the purchaser at the time of the sale. So if we were to click download, it's going to download a fillable PDF for you, and it's going to pull up, and the purchaser would be filling this out and giving it to the vendor in order to make that exempted transaction, okay? So how you're going to complete this is in section A, you're going to put the business information. So say I have a business, right? I'm a mobile vendor. I make things, I travel around the state to different craft shows and I sell my wares. So let's say my business name is Megan's Mobile Crafts. That's the name of my business. I would put my TPT license number in this field. I would put my business address, so on and so forth, okay? I could put my email address and then my vendor. Who am I giving this certificate to? So maybe I'm giving it to a big box retail store. I would put that vendor's name on this line right here. So all of this in section A needs to be filled out. The only optional part is that business email. Now, if we come over here to box B, we can see that this certificate is valid for either one single transaction or for a period. Okay, so if I want to furnish this completed 5000A, every time I make a purchase, I could have it be valid for one single transaction. If I want the vendor that I'm doing business with to keep this on file for a period of time, I would mark this box and input the dates that I want them to keep this on file. Now, that's from a purchaser perspective. We're going to switch hats for a minute and put on the vendor hat, okay? So we're getting this certificate from somebody. I want you to be aware of this section right here where it says time periods. If we read that little blurb, it says that these certificates can be kept on file for up to 48 months. However, the Department of Revenue does not recommend exceeding a 12-month period. Now, that 12-month period is because of what Darren talked about earlier, where licenses are only valid for 1 calendar year. So January to December. Okay, so if somebody gives me this certificate and they say they want me to keep it on file for 48 months, they renewed their license in 2023. In 2024, they didn't renew their license, and I continue to allow them to make tax exempt transactions and purchases. If I get audited and it's deemed that that license was not valid, and I continue to let them make tax exempt transactions, well, guess what? As the vendor, I'm going to be responsible for those taxes that were due on those purchases. Okay. So we recommend not having it valid for more than a 12-month period. And then we'll show you how to validate a license in just a minute. But then we come on down to section C. What is the precise nature of the purchaser's business? Well, I'm a mobile craft vendor, right? That's what we said. And now in section D, what is it that I'm purchasing? Well, if I'm a mobile craft vendor, what are some things that I might use? Drop them in the chat for me. What do you think are some things that I might use as a mobile craft vendor? If I'm making, say, blankets or t-shirts or headbands. What do you guys think? Spools of yarn, absolutely. Shirts, yep, totally. And what we could do, like paints, no, not paints, sequins, we see fabric, definitely, maybe some glue, anything. That's not how you spell glue. Anything that I would use in order to make my final item that I'm then selling to my customer, right? So I want to purchase all of these things as tax exempt because I'm going to make something with them and I'm going to sell them to my final customer who I'm then going to collect the tax from. Okay, so C and D should really correspond to one another. I'm a mobile craft vendor, therefore you should expect to see this kind of stuff that I'm purchasing. Okay, so section E, you're going to check one of these if they apply. If you're just doing sale for resale and none of these apply, leave them blank. And then section F is the certification. So one thing that we see a lot is that somebody could staple a business card here and say the business certifies this transaction. Well, that's not right. A business cannot certify a transaction. A person certifies a transaction. So I would say, I, Megan Hawker, hereby certify that I am able to make these purchases as sale for resale. I would sign it, provide my title, and the date that I'm filling this out and giving it to my vendor. Okay, so they're going to verify, they're going to take a look, make sure everything's filled out, and then they'll allow me to make that purchase tax exempt. Now, one of the things that they're doing as a vendor is verifying this form. There's a couple of things they need to verify. The first is they need to verify my license is active. Then they need to verify that the description of the property being purchased matches the nature of my business. So say I fill this out, I'm still Megan's Mobile Crafts, but what if I want to purchase, I don't know, a grand piano? Does that fit the nature of my business? Does a grand piano fit the nature of a mobile craft vendor? Probably not, right? So if Megan's Mobile Crafts comes into my piano store and gives me this exemption certificates and they say, I want to buy a Steinway tax exempt, I'm probably not going to allow that. It does not fit with the nature of a mobile craft vendor. That means that Megan's Mobile Craft would have to cart a Steinway around to every single show that she's using and attempt to sell it. I don't think that's what she's doing, so I wouldn't allow that purchase. So make sure that something in section D matches the nature of the business in section C. Okay, so that is the 5000A. That's how you fill it out. We verified as the vendor receiving this form, we verified that D and C match. Now I need to verify that Megan's TPT license is valid. So what we're going to do is we're going to come on over to the license verification tool, which is actually on aztaxes.gov. So if we type in AZ Taxes up here in the address bar, on the far right side under resources, we're going to come on down to nope, not tax rate lookup. Where is it? Sorry, up here at the top, license verification. And then we're going to type in that TPT license number that was listed on that form, okay? And I'm going to click submit. Okay, so this is showing me right here. This verification status is popped up in red, right? And it's saying that the number 1234567 is not a valid Arizona transaction privilege tax license. I performed this query on the 9th at 12:21. If you believe this information is inaccurate, the license owner can contact us. So as a vendor, if I verify a license and I get this message, I'm not going to let that person make that tax exempt purchase from me. I'm going to say, you know, the Department of Revenue states that your license is not valid. Please contact them. But for right now, unfortunately, we're not going to allow you to make this tax exempt purchase. Okay. And you can even click the contact us and you can give them the information to contact us. Now, if it was a valid license number, instead of showing up red, this little verification status right here would show up as green. And it's going to say this license number is a valid transaction privilege tax license number. In my previous world, I was in retail management. And what I would have my employees do anytime they received one of these exemption certificates and they verified the license is I would have them print this page that says that on on February 9th at 12:22, Megan checked the transaction or checked the license. It was valid. I'm going to staple it to that exemption certificate and I'm going to hold on to it for my records. If I were to get audited, this shows the auditor that I did my due diligence. I verified the license and therefore I allowed them to make that tax exempt transaction, okay? So if it shows up as red, not valid, don't let them make the tax exempt transaction. If it shows up as green, they can make that tax exempt transaction, assuming what they're purchasing matches the nature of their business, okay? Now, there does also exist this multi-state tax commission exemption form. So the Multi-State Tax Commission has developed a uniform sales and use tax resale certificate. So that's what this form is. The certificate has been deemed acceptable for use by 36 states. The certificate itself does contain the instructions on its use. It lists the states that have indicated to the commission that a properly filled out form satisfies their requirements, and it sets forth specific requirements and limitations for use. So for example, say I'm doing business, I'm purchasing something from a vendor in Georgia. Well, they're not going to accept the Arizona resale certificate, right? That's an Arizona form, but they could accept this multi-state tax commission exemption certificate form, right? If they're one of those 36 states that says, yep, this satisfies our requirements, well, I can go ahead and just fill out that form, give it to my vendor in Georgia, and they'll allow me to make that tax exempt sale or transaction. That saves me some time, right? It keeps me from having to find all of the resale certificates from all of the various states. So that's a good one to have as well. And I'm actually going to put that in the chat. That way you guys have access to that form because that's a really good one. But that's another way to do sales for resale when you have business in multiple states. This is that license verification tool that we talked about. I think Lorelei dropped the link for that one in the chat as well. And then there is a procedure. So if you're working with exemption certificates and you find yourself getting confused on what certificate do I use, when do I use it, how do I use it, there is a procedure. It's procedure 17-1 that you can read through. It tells you what the different certificates are used for. I've gotten several contracting questions today in the Q&A. This procedure will actually be really beneficial for all of our contractors. It's going to tell you the difference between like a 5005, a 5000M, a 5000L, the 5000. So if you're a contractor, I very highly recommend you visit that procedure, read through it, bookmark it, print it, whatever you need to do. But there's some great information in that one there. Okay. Now we're going to move on to deduction codes. And the way that I like to talk about deduction codes is if you have an exemption certificate, there's going to be a corresponding deduction code. So if you have one, you have to have the other. They kind of go hand in hand there, okay? So a deduction code is a code that is used to deduct income that is exempt or excluded from tax as authorized by the Arizona Revised Statutes and/or the Model City Tax Code. Some types of transactions are not subject to TPT and may be deducted from your tax base. So to claim deductions on exempted transactions, the deduction must be listed on the Schedule A of the TPT form. Only deduction codes listed using the correct deduction codes for the business classifications will be allowed. So what that means is when you're filling out the form, if you're using the paper form, I don't recommend using the paper form, file online. But if you're filling out the paper form, there's a section on there that talks about a Schedule A, and that's where you list your deductions. So it's not enough just to list it in the transaction details. You also have to fill out the deduction portion of the return. If you don't fill out that portion, your deduction is going to be disallowed, and it could result in a balance due on your account there. So a couple of things to note, this is super important, is that each business classification has a list of specific deductions that are allowed. So not every deduction code is applicable to all business transactions, okay? Retail is going to have a whole lot more deductions that they can claim versus like job printing, okay? So know your business classification, use your resources, and find what deduction codes you can use. By submitting your return online at aztaxes.gov, only allowable deductions for your business classification will be available for choosing. So it eliminates some of the instances that you could choose the wrong deduction code. Our paper filers, they're going to have to use the list that's on azdor.gov, and they're going to have to select the right code. If they select an incorrect code, again, it's going to be disallowed, and it could result in a balance due on your account. So this deduction code, I'm going to show you guys how to get there. If you go to our azdor.gov homepage, this little search bar that Darren showed us right up at the top, it's my best friend as long as you know how to spell. I'm going to put that caveat out there. You've got to know how to spell it. But if you type in deduction code and you hit this little magnifying glass, it will bring up a whole list. That very first item says deduction codes. That's what we want there. Okay. Here's that little blurb that's telling you about the deduction codes, what they're used for, and then it's going to give you a listing. So you'll see that there's a current table, and then there's one that was before October 1st of 2019. So if you need to amend any old returns prior to 2019, make sure you're using the old deduction code list, otherwise use the current one. So again, it's going to download as a PDF. Okay, and then this is what it's going to look like. So on the left-hand side, you're going to have the deduction code, right? It's going to tell you this is deduction code 500, this is deduction code 501, 502, 503, and it's going to give you a brief description of the statutory text or the Model City Tax Code. The next column is going to tell you the state business codes that can claim that deduction code. And on the right-hand side, it's going to tell you the city business codes that can claim that deduction code. So we just spent a ton of time talking about the 5000A, the resale certificate, right? So Megan's Mobile Crafts went into a big box retailer gave them this completed 5,000A, they let her make her purchase tax exempt, they're going to deduct that transaction from their gross receipts using deduction code 503, resale, sale for resale. Okay, they are in the retail business classification, which is business code 17. So here it is at the state level. And then here is that same business code at the city level. Okay, so they can deduct this transaction at both the state and the city level. So if you have an exemption certificate, chances are you're going to have a corresponding deduction code for that transaction. And that's how you would deduct it from your tax base. Okay, there's all kinds of deduction codes on here. Like, I mean, it's how many pages? I don't even know. 24 pages. 24 pages long. If you're a paper filer, you're going to have to use this list to find your appropriate deduction codes. However, if you are filing online at aztaxes.gov, it will only give you deduction codes that are applicable to your business classification. So it takes some of the guesswork out of it, okay? So if you're in a job printing business classification, it's not going to give you the availability of the retail deduction codes. You're not going to be able to choose those. So highly recommend getting online, filing on aztaxes.gov, because it does help you reduce some potential errors there. Okay. All right. And that's deduction codes. Our next section here is going to talk about added tax versus tax factoring. Is my screen going? There we go. So a vendor may pass on the economic burden of transaction privilege tax as a separate and distinct item of charge. An example of a common added tax situation is any retail store that you go into that has a line on the receipt that states tax or sales tax or local tax or something along those lines. Okay, that's what we mean by added tax. The tax was added to the transaction. So a person who states an added charge to cover the TPT imposed or that is identified as being imposed shall not remit less than the amount collected to the department. So that states that if I say I collected $8 from Darren in taxes, it shows it on his receipt. I cannot remit less than $8 in taxes to the Department of Revenue for Darren's transactions. I collected it as tax, it must be remitted as tax. Now, there is another way to do this. A person who does not state an added charge to cover the transaction privilege tax may choose to factor out that tax. So what is tax factoring? Tax factoring is a mathematical process that calculates the tax from the seller's receipts when a tax was not separately identified. So Robert mentioned when we first started that this is a huge week for the ACA, right? I mean, I think we all know why, but what happens on Saturday, you guys, or Sunday, sorry, drop it in the chat. What's going on in Glendale this weekend? Put it in the chat for me. The big game. Oh, Jamie. Football. Yes, exactly. So it's a sporting event, right? Think about all of those vendors that walk up and down the aisles and they try to sell you things. Overpriced popcorn, overpriced soft drinks, right? They tell you that our slide here says $4. It's probably more like $14 for a soft drink. But they come down and they tell you that their golf, yes, and absolutely, that your soda is going to cost you $14. Okay, so you pay the $14, you get your soft drink, and then you wonder, did they collect tax? Well, chances are they probably did. So what they're doing is they're going to factor out that tax from their gross receipts at the end of the day. So they're going to do all of their sales all day. They're going to charge all of us $14 for a soda. And then they're going to go back at the end of the night and they're going to say, I collected $1,000. how much of that $1,000 that I collected is tax. And they're going to use this tax factoring table to do that. So they're going to go to the Arizona Department of Revenue's websites. They're going to click on this table that says tax factoring for retail and other non-prime contractors. There's a table for contractors too. And they're going to click on it. And they're going to say, forgive me, I don't know what the tax rate is in Glendale off the top of my head, but let's say Phoenix. Okay, Phoenix's total tax rate, 8.6%. They're going to come down here and they're going to say, okay, 8.6%. Here's my tax rate. And here's this big, long 8-digit number. What they're going to do is they're going to take their gross receipts, okay, and say they made $1,000 that day, and they're going to multiply it by that tax factor number. Of that $1,000, $79, 0.18969 was tax. So they're going to factor out the tax from their gross receipts. So they're not saying that your soda was $12 plus $2 tax, it's $14. And then they're going to go back and factor out the tax later in the evening. Okay, so that's what we mean by tax factoring. If you're curious how they come up with these tax factors, it is explained at the bottom of the table here. It tells you how to go through it. It's like you move the decimal point and then divide the decimal by 1 plus that decimal, and it gets you this big long number. I'm not, even though I work for the Department of Revenue, I am not a math person. So I take their word for it and I use the table up here. Okay. So that's what we mean by tax factoring. This is also common for those mobile vendors like Megan's Mobile Crafts, right? When I go to craft fairs, I'm not going to say that my item is $7.25 and 75 cents tax. I'm going to say it's $8 and then I'm going to factor the tax out later. Okay. So that's what we mean by tax factoring. All right, guys. Now we're going to put it all together and hopefully help this make sense a little bit more. Okay. So putting it all together, what do we mean? How do we put exemption certificates and deduction codes and tax rate tables, and how do we put it all together and make it make sense? The first thing we're going to cover is some best reporting practices. Okay. So the first one is that a business that holds more than one license must also maintain separate records for each license. So what that means is, say I'm a very successful business owner and I own 3 separate businesses. I must maintain separate records, and if I have them licensed separately, I have to maintain separate licenses for each business. But more importantly, I need to maintain separate books and records, meaning I cannot lump the sales of Megan's Mobile Crafts together with Megan's Mobile Foods and make it make sense. If they're 2 separate entities, I got to maintain separate books and records. Now, additionally, each type of business classification code under one license is required to report under that specific classification code on the return. And I also must maintain separate books and records for each business classification. My favorite example to give for this one is, say you're at that old-timey restaurant, right? They have all kinds of rocking chairs outside their front door. You walk in and it's like a little trinket shop. They sell clothes and they sell old-timey candy and Southern sodas and toys and all kinds of stuff. And then you go through the gift shop and you're like in their restaurant area and you can order chicken and dumplings and hash brown casserole and all that kind of stuff. Well, right there, you can see under one roof, under one license, they have multiple business codes, right? They've got a retail business operating in the front side of their store, and they have a restaurant and bar in the back side of their location. That is 2 different business codes. It's retail, which is 017, and restaurant and bar, which is 011. That's 2 separate business activities, so I must maintain separate books and records. I can't lump the sales from my restaurant into the sales of my store and report it. I need to maintain separate books and records. If you do not maintain separate books and records and you happen to be audited, the business will be taxed at the highest tax rate by the auditor. So say, for instance, the Phoenix tax rate for retail is 8.6%. But what if the tax rate for restaurant and bar is, I don't know, I'm just making up a number. What if it happens to be 11%? The auditor is going to lump everything together. If I don't maintain separate books and records, they're going to lump everything together and they're going to charge me the highest tax rate. Because how much of my sales came from retail, how much came from restaurant, they don't know because I did not maintain separate books and records. So different business classifications require separate books and records, okay? Return and payment due dates. We got a lot of questions on this one as well in the Q&A there. So returns are always going to be due the 20th of the month following the reporting period. They're delinquent if not received by the department on or before the last business day of such month. Returns must be filed even when no sales have been made. And then we'll talk about payments in a minute. So what that means is, say I'm a monthly filer. My January return is going to be due February 20th. My February return will be due March 20th. My March return is going to be due April 20th, so on and so forth, okay? If I'm a quarterly file, quarter one, which is January, February, March, is going to be due April 20th. Quarter two, April, May, June, is going to be due July 20th. So it's always the month after. If I'm an annual filer, I'm going to collect my gross receipts from January to December, and I'm going to file the following January 20th. They are delinquent if not received by the department on or before the last business day of such month. So they're due on the 20th, but you have to the last business day of the month to make sure they're received by the department. Okay. Returns have to be filed even when no sales have been made. So if Megan's mobile craft takes off for the summer, I'm not doing any craft shows in the summer. It is too hot. I leave. I exit Arizona. If I'm a monthly filer, I still have to file returns for the summer months, even though I haven't done any business. So July, I'm going to log on to AZ Taxes and I'm going to check the box that says no gross receipts to report, and I'm going to file my return. August is going to come up. I'm still in, I don't know, I'm in the Bahamas, right? Relaxing on the beach. I'm going to log on to AZ Taxes. I'm going to check the box that says no gross receipts to report, and I'm going to file that return. So returns must be filed even when no sales have been made. Now, when we're talking about payments, when making a payment online via aztaxes.gov, your payment is not processed until the next business day. So therefore, to be considered timely, it must be processed, or it must be made the second to last business day of the month. Okay, so it's not processed until the next day, and then it will post the day after that. So to be considered timely, it must be made the second to last business day of the month. And then just as is the case with anywhere else, a business day is any day except Saturday, Sunday, or legal Arizona state holiday. Now, there does also exist an accounting credit. An accounting credit is just that. It's a credit that the state provides to timely filers. So timely electronic filers, those that file online at aztaxes.gov, receive an increased accounting credit of up to 1.2%, up to $12,000 for the year. Timely paper filers receive an accounting credit of up to 1% or $10,000 per year. It's important to note that not all business activities or business classifications are entitled to that credit, and that credit can only be claimed at the state level. It is up to the business owner to decide how and when to claim that credit. The Department of Revenue is not going to automatically add that to your return. So what this means is Megan's Mobile Crafts files their returns on time every single month, and they file them online at AZ Taxes. I can add this accounting credit to my return, and it's just going to put a little bit of money back in my pocket. I can claim that credit up to $12,000 in a year. Now, because Megan's Mobile Crafts is a tiny little mom and pop craft vendor, right? It's just me. I don't have a ton of sales. I may never reach that maximum threshold. However, say Darren has a huge box retail store, but he timely files too. He's able to claim that accounting credit. He may only claim that credit 2 or 3 months out of the year, and he's already going to max out that accounting credit. He's already going to meet that $12,000, and he can't claim it the rest of the year. So it's really going to depend on your credit, just depends on how much you have in gross receipts and all of that fun stuff. Just make sure the key thing there is that you need to be timely filed. So make sure all of your returns are filed by that due date. Okay. And this accounting credit, you can find that credit rate on the tax rate table. It's the very last 2 columns of column 1. It'll say accounting credit rate, and then it'll give you a percentage there for your business classification. So we talked about a little while ago the threshold for e-file, and it's $500, right? That's not a lot of money. So anyone that has an annual liability of $500 or more is statutorily required to file and pay online. Now, for those taxpayers that are unable to comply with the electronic filing and or payment requirements, they can submit a request to the department to continue to file and pay by paper using this annual waiver, and that's Form 292. So approval may be granted for taxpayers that don't have a computer. Maybe they don't have access to the internet. They live in a super remote part of Arizona, and they just can't file online for whatever reason. They can apply to the director and see if they can get a waiver in place to file and pay by paper. Okay. That is an annual waiver, so it does need to be completed each and every year. So if you're wanting to file by paper because you don't have internet access, well, first you wouldn't be able to join us today. But for whatever reason, if you need to request that, the waiver is available online and it is valid for 1 year. Now, there are also 2 paper forms that are in use. The first one is the TPT EZ, and that is used by businesses with only 1 physical location. And just like with the 140 EZ, like it's the easy form, right? So this business must report in 6 or less state, county, or city jurisdictions, and they must utilize 5 or less deduction codes. There are separate sections on the back of the form for the state and county transactions and the city transactions. And then there are separate tables for itemizing those deductions. The TPT-2 is used by every other business. So those businesses that have more than 1 physical location, or those businesses that report under 7 or more business codes, use 6 or more jurisdictions, more deduction codes. But please remember that if you have more than 1 physical location, you are required to file online at aztaxes.gov. Okay. So if you have to file the TPT-2 for whatever reason, you got to have a waiver on file. If you fail to file online when you're required to do so, you may be subject to penalties. Now, just like with the longer income tax form, the TPT-2 is a longer form. There are separate pages for the state and county transaction details and the city transaction details. There are separate pages for the Schedule A or the deductions at both the state county level and the city level. I can't tell you how many times people have submitted a TPT-2 and have left off the deduction pages So we have to disallow their deductions, and then they end up with a balance due on their account and they don't know why. And it's simply because they didn't send in the entire return. I've encountered that so many times. So to avoid that, file online. But if you are going to file by paper, make sure you include all pages of your return. Okay. All right. So now we're going to come in here with an example. And I want you guys to bear with me here because we're going to take it all the way back to middle school math class. And we're going to go through a word problem together. We're going to pull out specific pieces and I'm going to show you guys how to file that return on aztaxes.gov. Okay. So for reporting period, business A in Tucson had a total of $38,953.47 in gross receipts. And when I say gross receipts, I mean that is everything business A collected from taxpayers. Everything. $38,953.47. Okay, that's right here. Okay. During the reporting period, business A had $3,000 of product sales to another retailer that would resell the products, and that retailer furnished a completed 5,000-day exemption certificates to business A. Business A also separately stated tax on invoices to customers. They collected $2,877.60 in tax that was included in their gross receipts. So remember, gross receipts is everything I collected from my taxpayer. That includes taxes because I collected it from them. We're going to deduct it out later. Okay. Now that we know that, what information do we need and what does our return look like? So the first thing that comes to my mind is what are the regions in which I'm reporting? Remember, Darren called out region codes, and region codes are very important because they tell the Department of Revenue where to send your tax money. So if I'm doing business in Gila Bend, I want to make sure Gila Bend gets my tax money and not Gilbert. So you've got to make sure you're using the right business or the right region codes. So we said our business was in Tucson. So our first region code is for Pima County, and that's PMA, Pima County. Our region code for Tucson is going to be TU for Tucson. One thing I like to point out is that your region codes for your counties are always going to be 3 letters. Maricopa, MAR, Cochise, COC, Pima, PMA. Your region codes for your counties will always be 3 letters. Your region codes for your cities will always be 2 letters. So Tucson, TU, Phoenix, PX, Peoria, PE, always 2 letters. Okay. Next, what is the business code that business A is reporting under? Well, we said they had sales, right? They had sales of product. That tells me they're a retail business. Retail is business code 017. I can find that on the tax rate table. I can find that on the aztaxes.gov tax rate lookup tool. I am engaged in the retail business classification 017. Now, from the tax rate table or from the AZ Taxes tax rate lookup tool, I can see all of my tax information. So I can see that the state and county Pima tax rate is 6.1%. I can see that Tucson has a retail tax rate of 2.6%. So my total combined tax rate is going to be my state plus my county, which equals 8.7%. Okay. Now we're going to continue. We said that business A collected $2,877.60 in taxes from their customers. That's included in their gross receipts. So they want to make sure they deduct that from their tax base. You don't want to pay taxes on taxes. So they're going to use deduction code 551 for tax factored or collected. And they're going to use that to deduct the amount of taxes that they collected from their customers. They also said that they had $3,000 for a sale for resale. So somebody came into their business, gave them a 5,000A, that transaction was worth $3,000. We need to deduct that from our gross receipts because we didn't collect taxes on it. Okay, so we're going to deduct it from our tax base. So these are the two deduction codes we're going to use, 551 and 503. These deductions are valid at both the state, county, and the city levels. So we're going to claim it at both the state level and the city level. All right. So that's all the important information. That's everything we need to file our return. So now we're going to go on into aztaxes.gov and we're going to get this filed. Okay. Let me turn off my laser pointer here. That's a little distracting now. All right, so I've logged into aztaxes.gov. I've completed my new user enrollment. I've linked my business. Everything is there. So when I log on, the first thing I'm going to see is my business list. This business list is any business that is associated with my email address. Okay, so I'm going to find business A on my business list. If you're only associated with one business, you could just have one there. But say you're a CPA and you're associated with 6 different businesses, you do the books for 6 businesses, you could have 6 businesses listed here. So make sure you find the appropriate business, and all the way to the far right-hand side, under the actions header, you're going to click view. This will take you to the business details page. So now these are the details of business A. We can see here is my transaction privilege tax license. My license number would be listed there. You can see my status says active. If I have any outstanding balances, they're going to be listed next. If I have any pending payments, they're going to be listed here. And then I can see account details or location details. But what I want to do is file my return. Well, if you look to the left-hand side, my menu has now expanded and there's a button that actually does say file. So I'm going to click on file and I'm going to click on transaction privilege and use tax. This will take me to my account or period selection screen. So from this screen, I'm going to use these drop downs and I'm going to make the appropriate selections. So I'm going to pick my license number. If I only have one license number, there's just going to be one in the list. I'm going to pick the year that I want to file for. So we're on February 9th. I'm going to file, say, for January. I would say the year would be 2023. My month would be January. And then these 3 boxes right here are going to pop up. One says amended return. One says no gross receipts to report. The other says close your account. This will be your final return. You will only want to check one of those boxes if they pertain to the return you are currently filing. So amended return means that I filed a return and I need to go back and fix a mistake that I made. So I need to amend it. I need to refile it all over again. Here's that no gross receipts to report button, right? That's what Megan's Mobile Crafts is going to use when she's sitting on the beach in the Bahamas and she didn't have any sales in the summer months. She's going to log on, select her license, her year, her month. She's going to check that box and she's going to finish her return. And then this final one says, close your account. This will be your final return. This will close your license. Only check this box if you truly intend to close your license because you are no longer going to be in business. This is telling the department that this is the final return. You're no longer going to be in business. We should expect no further returns or payments from you. Only check this box if you are truly, truly closing your license, okay? If none of these pertain to the January return that we're getting ready to file, go ahead and click continue. Leave them blank, click continue. Now, this next page may or may not display. This is your location list. If you have more than one location on your license, you're going to see location 001, location 002, location 003, because you must report those gross receipts separately, right? You've got to maintain separate books and records for each location. Therefore, you would have to file separately for each location. You can't lump it all together there. In this instance, if you have multiple locations, we're going to start with location 1 and we're going to click view line items. If you only have one location, you're going to default to your transaction details page, which looks just like this. Okay. The first thing to note is there's no continue button, so you can't just bypass it. You got to put something in here. And it's telling you what to do right up here at the top. I know it's tiny right here, so I'm going to walk you through it. But really what it's wanting is it just needs us to input the return information, all that stuff from our word problem earlier. So we're just going to start on the county line. So here it says Pima County, PMA. There's my retail business classification of 017, and all of my figures say 0. Well, that's because I haven't put anything there yet. So under the actions header, I'm going to click edit. And this is going to open the transaction details for the county transactions. Okay. So this, you'll see some things are in a dark gray. This means you cannot edit those fields. You can only edit the white fields there. So my region is going to default to Pima. My business description is going to default to retail. The first thing that I can put in here is my gross receipts. For those of you that don't recall, business A had $38,953.47. See, told you, not a math person. So they're going to input that in the gross receipts field. Next, they need to add their deductions, right? But they can't just type in a number. Okay, they have to click this button off to the right-hand side that says add deductions. This is going to take them to a deduction code list. And when they first click this button, it's going to show all of the deductions that are applicable to the retail business classification. So there's a couple of different ways that they can add their deductions. The first one is they can look through the list. They can see everything, they can pick which one they need, and they can just input the number. But as they get familiar with the process, say they know their deduction codes, right? We know from the example that deduction code 551 was for tax factored or collected and included in the gross receipts. So we can just search. There's a little search bar right here. We can type in 551. We could type in tax factored, we could type in tax collected, we could type in tax, and we could search the deduction codes. And it's going to bring up any of those deduction codes that have that deduction code number, that have those key words. It's going to bring up your deduction code for you. So here's deduction code 551, tax collected or factored included in my gross receipts. And it's now asking me for an amount. So remember, back from our example, we collected $2,877.60 in taxes. So we want to deduct that from our tax base. We do not want to be taxed on our tax. So we're going to input that number right here in the deduction amount. And you'll see it's keeping a running tally for us. So it's showing us our gross receipts from the previous page. And it's showing how much we've input in deductions so far. So far, it's just that $2,000. But we know we had another deduction, right? We had that sale for resale that we need to account for. So I can either click show all and have it list all of my deductions, or I can search again. So 503, that is a very common deduction code that more than likely all business owners will use at some point in time. Sale for resale. You can type in resale here. You can type in 503. You can type in sale, and any keywords that it finds, it's going to bring up that deduction code. So we see here's 503 resale, sales for resale. And now I need to enter my deduction amount, $3,000. That is that transaction that another entity came into my business. They gave me a 5,000A and said, I'm going to make this purchase tax exempt because they're going to sell it to their final customer. They're going to collect tax at that point. So this is a tax exempt transaction. I'm going to deduct the entire cost of that transaction from my gross receipts. That was $3,000. So I'm going to input my deduction amount right here, and it's keeping my running total. So again, gross receipts, that's the same, that has not changed, but my total deductions down here has increased by $3,000. So now I have $5,877.60 in gross receipts. Okay. If I'm done, I no longer need to enter deductions. This is all I'm going to claim. I'm going to click the continue button, and it's going to take me right back to that transaction details for the county. And now AZ Taxes is going to do the math for me. Like I said, I'm not a math person. So if AZ Taxes is going to do it for me, sign me up. So it's got my gross receipts. It's pulled my deductions in from the other screen. And now it's doing my math. So gross minus deductions equals my net taxable. Net taxable times my tax rate equals my total tax due. So AZ Taxes is doing the math for you. Everything in gray cannot be changed. So this tax rate is the tax rate for Pima County. I don't have to worry about that. It says 6.1%. We know from the start of our example that in fact, Pima County has a retail tax rate of 6.1%. Okay. Now you'll also see this little thing down here that says credit rate. That's my accounting credit. So if I file timely, I can claim that accounting credit. But remember, it's up to me as a business owner to claim that credit, to put it on my returns. AZ Taxes isn't going to do it for me. The Department of Revenue isn't going to do it for me. I've got to do it myself. So here's my credit rate. It's telling me that I can claim 0.0672. That's my credit rate. So how do you figure out how much you can claim? Well, you take your net taxable times that credit rate is going to give you the amount of the credit you can claim. Remember, the larger your gross receipts, the larger those credit numbers are going to be. My sister used to have a little t-shirt shop, and I would help her with her returns. She would only have $100, $150 in sales. So her credit was literally like 80 cents. So remember, keep in mind that the credit amount is going to be dependent upon your gross receipts and your net taxable. Okay, so the higher that number, the higher the credit, but it will not exceed $12,000 for electronic filers, $10,000 for paper filers. Okay. So if everything is entered, everything is done accurately, you're good to go. You're going to click this button that says save and close. And that's going to take us right back to our line items page. So now we can see Pima County retail. There's my gross receipts. There's my deductions. There's my net taxable. And there's my state and county tax due. That's only state and county. I still have to do this process now for the city level. And it's the exact same process. Okay. So here's the Tucson city line. Here's the retail business code. Everything says 0. I need to input my same figures, my same gross receipts, my same deductions, so that we can figure out how much we owe in city taxes. So we're going to click the edit button under the actions header on the city line. And it's going to take me right back to a very similar line items page for the city level. Okay. Again, my region has pre-populated for me. Here is Tucson. Here's my business description, retail. I cannot change those. The only thing that I can change is my gross receipts. So I'm going to enter that $38,953.47, and I'm going to click the Add Deductions button. Okay. Takes me to that same deduction code screen, and we're going to do the same thing again. So we can either look through the list of deductions, or we can search. 503 is sale for resale. So I can either type in 503, I can type in resale, I can type in sale, whatever I need to find that deduction code. I know it's 503, so I'm going to type in 503 and click search. It's going to pull it up from the list for me. 503, resale, I'm going to enter my amount, $3,000. So there's my gross receipts, and there's my $3,000 deduction. I know I have one more to claim, right? The amount of taxes I've already collected from my customers. So I'm going to search deduction code 551, and I'm going to click search, and it's going to pull it up. Deduction code 551, tax collected or factored included in gross receipts. And I'm going to enter that deduction amount, $2,877.60. It's the same amount from the state deduction. You'll see my gross receipts has been pulled over for me, still there. And now my total deductions have increased to that $5,877.60 number. Okay. I've entered all of my deductions, so I'm going to go ahead and say continue. This brings me right back to that enter line items page for the city level. So I'm going to verify that AZ Taxes is doing the math for me. Gross minus deductions equals net taxable. Net taxable times my tax rate equals my total tax due. If everything looks right, I'm going to click save and close. Now remember that accounting credit is only valid at the state level. So you're not going to see a credit line here, okay? Because it's only valid at the state level. So you don't have the option to claim the credit right here. So everything looks great. The math is perfect. I'm going to say save and close because I do know that 2.6% is the business or is the retail tax rate for Tucson. And it's going to bring me back to my line items page. Whoops, sorry. Back to my line items page. So from here, I'm just going to verify that everything was entered accurately. Pima line, Tucson line, retail, retail, same gross receipts, same deductions, net taxable. You can see we owe $2,017.63 in tax at the county level, the state county level, $859.97 at the city town level. Everything looks great. I am almost done. So if you have multiple locations, you're going to click this button that says return to location list. If you only have one location, this instead will say continue. Okay. So here's the continue button. This is if we had multiple locations, you would have to do the same process for location 2, location 3. If you only have one location, you're going to click continue. And then it's going to bring you to an excess tax screen. And excess tax is just what it sounds like. It is extra. It is additional taxes that you may have collected above and beyond what was required to be due. If you collected it as tax, it must be remitted as tax. 9 times out of 10, you are not going to collect excess tax. So all of these will default to no. In the event you did collect excess tax, you would simply switch the radial button over to yes and enter the amount of excess tax. An instance in when this might happen is, say your city recently passed an ordinance where they reduced a tax rate. So say I'm in retail and they dropped the rate from 2.3% down to 2.1. I didn't adjust my POS systems in time, so I collected more tax than what was due from my customers. Well, AZ Taxes is going to update to that correct tax amount that doesn't match my POS system. So it's going to say I owe $100 less than what I collected, but because I collected it as tax, I have to remit it as tax. If that happened at the city level, I would say yes to city excess, and I would enter the amount. If it happened at the state level, I would say yes at the state line and enter that amount. 9 times out of 10, it does not happen. So leave it as no and click on continue. And then this is going to bring you to your summary page so you can verify everything. Well, look, it's telling me my total tax due is $2,877.60. That's exactly what I collected from my customers. That is spot on. It's perfect. We didn't collect any excess tax, so there's going to be zeros there. I didn't claim any credits because poor business A was late filing a return. They're not eligible to claim that accounting credit, so they didn't put it. If they knew that they were late on this return, they do have the option to include penalties and interest. To me, again, not a math person. I don't like trying to figure out penalties and interest. So I say leave it blank and let the department bill you. Okay. And then it's going to tell you your amount due. My amount due for business A for this return is $2,877.60. Awesome. That's exactly what we collected from our customers. I need to submit my return. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to enter my e-signature PIN and I'm going to click submit. Remember, your e-signature PIN serves as your signature, your digital signature, right? When you submit this return, it's associated with your name and your profile. It tells the department who filed that return. So if my PIN is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I enter it here. It says it knows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 from this profile is Megan Hawker. And it's going to have my name printed on the signature lines. So I want to call your attention real quick to these buttons at the bottom, because these buttons do tend to cause some confusion for our taxpayers. The first one, it says previous. That's pretty self-explanatory. If you click the previous button, it's literally going to take you back to this excess tax screen. Okay. If you click view Schedule A, we've said it a couple of times, that's going to take you back to your deductions. Okay. So if you want to see what deductions you have listed, you can click view Schedule A and it'll pull that up for you. If you want to review your line items, you can click this button and it's going to take you back to that line item transaction detail, the screen that has the Pima line and the Tucson line. That's where it's going to take you. And then these two buttons, for whatever reason, cause the most confusion. Save versus submit. Save is simply telling AZ Taxes to save your place. You are going to come back and finish this return later. Save is simply saving your place. The only way that the Department of Revenue will get your return is if you enter your e-signature PIN and click submit. That's the only way we're going to get that return, is if you actually submit it. Okay. You'll know it was submitted when you get a confirmation page, and it's going to look something like this. So it says return confirmation, and it says your TPT return has been submitted, and here is your confirmation number. Now, if for whatever reason you need to call and speak to somebody about this return, have this confirmation number handy. It will help us look up that return a little bit faster for you. Okay. And then it's telling you your liability is $2,877.60. That's exactly what we expected to pay. That's exactly what we collected from our customers. It's going to give you a little bit more information here on the screen. Make sure you read it. But then it's giving me this nice little link here. I can go ahead and select make a payment and make that $2,877.60 payment, because you're not considered in compliance until you have both filed their return and made the corresponding payment. It's always going to be 2 steps. File the return, make the payment. Okay. Now, if for whatever reason you want to go back and look at old returns that you have filed, maybe you don't remember what deduction codes you've used, you do have access to those past returns that you have filed using aztaxes.gov. You can click on this e-filed TPT return history button, and it's going to bring you to a page that displays your history of all of the returns that you have filed using aztaxes.gov. Caveat: all returns filed using aztaxes.gov. If you missed a month and you filed by paper, it will not show on this screen. Only returns that have been electronically filed will show on this screen. Okay? But it's going to list your license number, it'll list your business name, and it will list your period start date, period end date for all returns that you filed. So if you want to look at it under the actions header, click on view, and it's going to pull up an exact copy of that electronic return. This looks just like the paper copy. So here's your taxpayer information, your business information. Here's your license number, the period, the postmark date. It'll also have your confirmation number on it. This is your summary of what's included on the last couple pages. And then right here is where it would say Megan Hawker, right? This is where it's putting my e-signature. Then you can toggle, you can click on next page to see the other pages. You can print it if you want a paper copy, but if you filed electronically, it will always be here. All right, guys, that brings us almost to the end here. We are going to have some time for some question and answer. But Miss Faith, if you are with us, this is where we would like to launch those knowledge check questions. So we're going to see how well everyone was paying attention. A knowledge check should have just popped up on your screen here. It is only 5 questions, so please go ahead and take a few minutes to do those with us. Statement 1, true or false? Registering to file and pay taxes online is a 3-step process. True or false? Statement 2, all deduction codes are applicable to all business classifications. True or false? Statement 3, businesses with more than one physical location are required by law to file using aztaxes.gov. True or false? Statement 4, businesses with more than $500 in TPT liability must file electronically. True or false? And statement 5, region and city codes are used to report and disperse revenue to the city and town in which it was collected. True or false? Go ahead and get your answers in there for us. And then we'll go on to questions and resources. Awesome. So real quick, your answers. Statement 1 is true. Statement 2 is false. Statement 3 is true. Statement 4 is true. And statement 5 is true. If you guys don't mind sharing, how'd you do? Put it in the chat. Did you get them all right? Did you get one wrong? Which one did you miss? Let's celebrate with you. 4 out of 5, great job. That's fantastic. 4 out of 5, great. 4 out of 5, okay. 5 out of 5, woohoo! Go Christy. 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5. You guys are rock stars. Y'all are awesome. 5 out of 5, fantastic. in my book, you all get absolutely gold stars because not only did you stay with us throughout the entire workshop, you stayed with us over and after your lunch break. You did great on the questions. You've asked some awesome questions. 5 out of 5, 5 out of 5, misstatement 3, okay. Number 3, thought it was a trick question. 4 out of 5, great job, guys. Awesome, awesome. And with that, guys, we're gonna go ahead and open it up for some question and answers. So if you have any other questions, I encourage you, go ahead, drop them in the Q&A. I can see everything that pops up. Thank you to Lorelei for going in there and answering those questions. If you have any more, go ahead and drop them in there. I'll answer them live for you. And as you're typing in any other final questions you have, I'm going to share with you guys some available resources that we have at the department. So first, that trick question, I don't think it was a trick question, but I can see the difference. The Arizona Department of Revenue does have 2 websites. The first one is aztaxes.gov. That's where I tell you guys, if you want to do something, you go to aztaxes.gov. If you want to file a return, you go to aztaxes.gov. If you want to verify a license, you go to aztaxes.gov. If you want to look up a tax rate, go to aztaxes.gov. That's where you go to take action on your account. If you're looking for more knowledge, you want clarification, you want to see the paper forms, that's where you go to azdor.gov. So AZ Taxes, that's your action website. AZDOR, that's your informational website. On the azdor.gov webpage, there's also a link to the Model City Tax Code. That's going to be your city-specific profiles. Arizona's 91 cities and towns, they don't always tax the same things. And moreover, they don't always charge the same tax rates. So what's taxable in Phoenix at maybe 2.3%, across the way in Glendale, it may be 2.6%. So check out, I encourage you guys, look at the Model City Tax Code, check out the profile for your specific city. The example that I always love to give is the amusement classification, specifically gym fees. I don't know about you, but I do not associate the gym with amusement, but some cities do, and they tax their gym membership fees. So keep that in mind. Check out your profile, your city and town profiles on the Model City Tax Code webpage. We've mentioned it several times. Lorelei's dropped it in the chat several times for us. This quick reference tool. When you're filing online at aztaxes.gov, keep this quick reference tool up. It's got a lot of the links that we dropped today. It's got a lot of them built into it. So take a look at that. Use it often. It's got a lot of great tips and tricks. We also had a lot of questions about remote sellers, people who were doing things online. There is a team within the department. It's called the E-commerce Compliance and Outreach Team. Their sole focus is economic or online sales. Okay, I was going to say a fancy name, and just for the life of me, I can't even remember what I was going to say. But sales facilitated through the internet. It's more so for out-of-state entities that are selling into Arizona. But if you think you could have economic nexus or a filing responsibility in any other state, reach out to them. They can give you some guidance on who to contact within those other states, just to make sure that you're not missing anything. And if you are interested in any of our TPT tutorials, any other workshops that we may facilitate, if you represent a larger group and you would like one of us to come speak to your group, you can request a speaker at azdor.gov/taxpayer-education. That's where you can find all those TPT tutorials. You can see our other workshops, and you can get in contact with my team, the education and training team. So with that, we just want to say thank you guys. Thank you so much for spending such a long portion of your day with us today. Thank you to the ACA for having us. We always enjoy these partnerships and getting outside of our little community to other people who may not always have the opportunity to interact with the Department of Revenue. So on behalf of Darren and the entire education and training team and myself, just thank you guys. And I'm going to put myself on mute, grab some water, and see if there are any other questions that we can answer for you guys.
While we're waiting to see if there's any other questions, Megan, I want to say thank you to Megan and Lorelei and Darren for presenting and being with us today. We're excited to have a partnership with the Department of Revenue to be able to share these things. I don't see any new questions popping up, but I want to thank all the attendees for being here with us for the entire workshop. A long lunch and learn, but a lot of great information. So again, thank you for being with us. And we hope to see you on future sessions. And Megan, I don't see any new questions, so I think we'll go ahead and wrap up.
Awesome. Either we've royally confused them or we did a great job. I'm going to guess the latter. We just did a fantastic job, so nobody has any other questions for us.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you, Megan, for being with us. Thank you, Lorelei, for helping in the Q&A. And again, we appreciate everybody being here with us today, and we hope to see you on future bootcamp webinars and at bootcamp workshops. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.